Welcome to Vikings and Muses, conversations between a man and woman about life, the universe, and everything. I am Dylan Bain, and joining me as always is my co-host.
Hey y'all, Anya Shack.
Okay, so we always start off by kind of chatting before we hit record, and we started talking about we're pre-recording a lot. I have 3 weeks worth of content. I'm leaving for a trip to go to Wisconsin, where my whole family is. I'm in fact going to a family reunion. so, and I've got 3 weeks where I'm not going to be able to record. So I have to record 3 weeks of content. So for my own podcast, that's 6 episodes of Fiscally Savage, and then 3 episodes with you, so that I can stay on track to maintain that level of consistency. And it's a lot. I'm a little intimidated.
So, right after Dylan was telling me he's got to record 6 episodes between now and Thursday, I was like, holy shit, I'm so inspired. That's so inspiring. And Dylan was like having a hard time accepting that compliment. Because what did you say, Dylan?
I have a hard time understanding why it's inspiring that I do my job.
Okay. And I was basically saying that, you know, that's not a lot of people's default, right? To say I'm going to pre-record 6 episodes so that I don't miss my twice a week cadence that I committed to, and like just to make sure that continues without faltering. Most people would like be like, would say, okay, I have this life event coming up. I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, so I'll pick back up where I left off. That's like a default of most people. And so what I find to be so inspiring about that is just the level of integrity that exists there. Because the most important thing that Dylan said was, I said I was going to do this, so I'm going to do it.
Totally. I mean, even just having the conversation, like it's harder for me. Like, yes, the vast majority of people would be like, "Oh, shit happens. Life is lumpy." I have an excuse, and my excuse is supposed to make it. And like we've conditioned them for that because that's how schools work. If you have just the right excuse, they wave the magic wand, and all the problems go away, right? But for me, it's like, no, I set out to be successful. This is what's required for success, and if I don't do it, then I can't be trusted. If I can't be a man, if I can't be a man of my word to me, how am I possibly going to expect my wife, my kids, my roommates, my friends, you to trust me? I'm clearly not
Totally.
trustworthy.
No, I think what you're speaking to is it's just such an important distinction between men and women. And I think the reason it's so important, like integrity, this idea of integrity is so important in a man, it's what you kind of link your identity to. Like your
Hmm.
identity as a man, as a trustworthy man, literally links to you doing exactly what you say you're going to do no matter what. And I think what's interesting is the same is not true for women. And
Ooh.
I would love to talk about that because I've been talking about this a lot in my women's group. And the big, like, quote unquote, like, short of it is women have zero integrity. But
Ooh.
that's not a bad thing.
This is what I love about our conversations. They're always so light. Um, okay. Yeah. Which side do you want to tackle first? Because I feel like if we're going to make a comment, I mean, your statement about like, oh, for men, integrity is part of their identity. I think for men that's true, but that's not males, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
for sure. That's what I'm saying. Essentially, the thing I find most sexy, most attractive, most endearing, most trustworthy in a man is his integrity.
Totally.
Um,
Totally.
so I just wanted to kind of say like, here's an example, just to jump in, really quickly, and then I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay.
If you and I were made plans to say I came to Denver for a week, right? And we had plans to go see a movie, or we had plans to go on like a walk on a Tuesday night, right? On Monday, it was like, great, we made this plan. Tuesday night, it's happening 7 p.m. Great. On Tuesday morning, I was like, oh, I don't want to go there anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to. I have this like new truth in my body, right? Yesterday it sounded like a great idea, but today I just don't want to do it anymore. If
Okay.
I told you that I don't want to do that anymore, and here's why, um, you wouldn't think less of me as a woman. You would be like, okay, well, she changed her mind.
Totally.
But if the reverse was true, I would think less of you as a man.
Hmm. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
geez, there's a lot there. So,
So,
yeah, light topics again. Yeah. So here's what I would say is that like I wouldn't say you're out of integrity. If you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I have this feminine knowing that I am not going to go do X Y Z. I would not think less of you for you just texting me right away and be like, hey, I don't know what's changed, but I don't want to go do this thing. Let's figure something out. And in fact, Dylan, I want you to just figure something out and I'll go with whatever, just not that thing. Okay,
yeah.
cool. Like to me, that is the most integrity based thing you could do, right? Because you're
Okay.
being open, you're being honest, you're honoring yourself enough to know you're knowing, and you're honoring yourself enough to let it be seen. And so as a man, like I'm like, oh, that's perfect, right? I know exactly where I stand. I know it's not a rejection of me. I know exactly what my the call of the feminine is. Dylan, figure something out. Okay, cool. On the other hand, though, I would say that you're completely out of integrity if you show up anyway and try to like soldier your way through it. And I feel like women do that second one more, and that's the problem.
Well, it's because they've been trained to function in a bit more of a hypermasculine way in that they can't go back on their word if they've already given their word and they feel like it's wrong, so they people please. That's why
Hmm,
they do it. They don't do it because they want to show up and like have a shitty time and have an attitude. They do it because they think that's what they're supposed to do.
totally. Ooh. Did you do sports in high school?
Yeah.
What sport?
So in middle school, I did basketball. That's where I got my nickname Shaq. I was really tall and I was a post. But then I did swimming. I spent many years on swim teams, and then I got into dance.
Okay. So, so I don't know. This is the first time I'm ever asking this question. When I was in wrestling, I wrestled and did football. I should have just done
Okay,
nothing but wrestling. All violent sports for Dylan.
sure,
But in wrestling, like we would do, like part of our workouts were to try to like work ourselves to complete destruction, right?
yeah.
Like we used to joke like it's not a true practice until someone throws up. And so we would run wind sprints upstairs, we would be carrying logs, we would grab throw one of your fellow wrestlers over your shoulder and sprint across the basketball court. Like that was normal for us. And it was one of these we used to always joke that like when you're doing it, you hate it, but as soon as you're done, you feel like you're God, right? Like we get such
Totally,
and biologically we get this huge boost of testosterone for being successful in the face of adversity.
totally.
So my question to you is when women or you specifically, but women in general, gut through something, do you have that sense of euphoria on the other side?
Yeah, when we feel a knowing, we connect to it, and then we communicate it. It's very euphoric. I feel like more of myself afterwards.
Okay,
Is
maybe
that
a
what you're
phrase.
saying? Or no, sorry, you're saying like when I like same thing as you, essentially like show up to the workout even if I don't feel like it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's so much better because I hated it more.
Oh, I hear you. I have absolutely felt that. And I've actually been training pretty hard with like a new trainer. So I've been really excited to get stronger and stronger. And I'm literally experiencing that right now. And I don't miss a workout because I've committed to that. But it's so funny. I have a very clear compartmentalization of that being like a masculine aspect of me that
Hmm.
I'm cultivating. And so in regards to that, like the workout, the training, like I don't miss a workout. And if I don't want to go, it does feel amazing afterwards. I'm like, I'm on top of the world. I am Wonder Woman. I'm
Hmm.
Superwoman. I'm all this stuff. But but I don't see that as connected to who I am and like at my core. Like that doesn't give me a sense of identity that is meaningful, I guess, as meaningful as the feminine stuff.
That's fair. I mean, I guess where I was trying to
Okay.
kick into it is wondering, like, do women show up because they feel like they've been conditioned to, but they don't get the payoff, right?
Oh.
So
Mm,
and again, I'm just kind of kicking this around in real time here because I think about like
sure.
what would happen if I was in Dallas and you said we're going to go do X, Y, and Z, and I wake up in the
Sure.
morning and be like, God, that's dumb. I don't want to go do that. I
Sure.
would do it anyway,
Sure, you would.
right? And the reason that I would do it is because the activity with the woman is not nearly as important as the experience with the woman. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I'm there for her. And that's
Sure.
basically true regardless of what I'm doing. Like I'm there for
Sure.
her or I'm trying to include her in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas maybe it's different on the other side.
I think it's different on the other side. I think this just points to a very clear thing that not a lot of people want to realize, but this is one of those like nuanced ways of identifying just how much the masculine is in service to the feminine and not the other way around.
No, I think that, yeah, absolutely. I would say that it's just when you talk about like women aren't in integrity, like to me, it's because you think about like your example of like you wake up and you're like, no, I know I agreed, but I don't want to do this anymore. It's not true.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
integrity piece is vocalizing that. Whereas
For
for
sure.
me, it's completing the task. But then as Ryan Mickler likes to point out, like the three masculine obligations: protect, provide, preside. All
Yeah.
three of those require me to show up regardless of whether or not I want to.
Totally. 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 I think it's because of our let's think about this. Why is it different that why is it different? Because of like what your job is as a man in the general sense of things versus what my job is as a woman. And
Hmm.
I've talked about this a couple times. One of my favorite ways to think about what my job is as a woman is to keep the channel of love clear. And the way I do that is by speaking my truth all the time.
Hmm.
So the job of a man is different, right? It's what you just said: protect, provide, preside.
Yeah, that's Ryan Mickler's way
Yeah,
of putting the three tasks. I mean, you could basically say it that it's leadership, defense, and resources. Um,
right, right. So you being in it's almost like then I changed my mind. Okay, I changed my mind. What I
mhm.
said before, women have zero integrity. Maybe what I'm trying to say is the way we show our integrity is completely different.
That feels more correct to me because
Okay.
it like and I say this like this morning I was on a call with my men's group and we were having a very similar conversation about integrity
Yeah.
as it relates to fidelity specifically, but it relates here too. If and one of the guys on my team, he's really, I wouldn't say he's anti-woman, but he's more red pill than most of us.
Sure.
And so he's like women can't be trusted, like they're so flimsy, like they just flit
Mm,
around. And I'm like, well, okay, but like, so you described, like to me, it was like, well, you described a feminine that doesn't understand she's feminine, right? Like you
right.
you you described an immature feminine who's not comfortable with that, and so she
Yeah.
flails about. Like, no
Yeah.
shade on her, but like you need to understand that. Um, so I think like the statement of like, well, women have no integrity. Well, yeah, they have no integrity if we expect women to be men. Then of course
Exactly.
you don't. But I
Exactly.
don't have any integrity either because from I would imagine, and I'm speculating that on the other side, if something isn't true to me and I soldier my way through it, you will feel like I wasn't honest with you,
Totally.
even though
100%.
I'm 100% fine with like, well, this sucks, but put my head down and get through it. Like I'm a dude. That's what I do.
Yeah. I guess it comes back to I guess it just comes back to love. like what's the reason? What's the reason you're doing anything? Um, like love or maybe purpose or um I don't know. It just I'm just thinking out loud here, but I guess the you probably wouldn't commit to doing something if you didn't want to. If you really deeply down like in your core and it didn't want to in a bigger sense. I don't know.
I mean that is I've had plenty of people in my life joke that like you can't like Dylan's either hell yes or no. There is no middle ground. Like if I don't believe in what I'm doing, I can't do it. It was my
Yeah.
biggest issue in school when I went through undergrad. I
Yeah.
didn't know why I was there. So yeah, there is certainly a kernel of truth to that. But I think it's important to go back to that idea of feminine knowing though, because like that's where men get really frustrated because we don't understand that.
Totally.
Like
Totally.
it's so rare to see that. In fact, there was an Instagram video where there was a woman who's a relationship therapist, and she was explaining how to make a proposal ultimatum, and she was saying like, I'm ready to take our relationship to the next step. That would mean engagement. I think it's a part of our commitment and our union, and that's where I need to be. And I'm not telling you that you have to do this, but I am telling you that I know that I need this in the next 3 months, or I'm going to start resenting you. And if it doesn't happen in the next 3 months, then I need to reevaluate. And part of that reevaluation might be me leaving, but it also might be me deciding I need to ask you. And I'm trying to show and reveal myself to you. And I listened to it, and I was like, I was caught between these two places of like, on the one hand, that is exactly what I want in this life. I want women who will just tell me exactly where I stand, what their knowing is, where they're at, and allow me to choose, my relationship to that. And on the other hand, it happens so rarely that this was outside of my homeostasis, and therefore I don't trust it.
Hmm.
And the tension
Interesting.
between those two is really hard to handle.
What you just described is really interesting. After hearing you talk about the way this woman kind of brought this to her, I guess, boyfriend, um, I don't know. I don't know about that. It seems, it seems, I get it. It's nice. I get where you're coming from. Like her to be able to reveal that part of herself, like, I will start resenting you if it doesn't happen. I need to reevaluate the relationship. I just feel like to get to that place where that conversation is being had, there had to have been quite a bit of non truth happening.
Hmm. I would push back at that. I would actually say that there's a
Hmm.
lot of if she's comfortable enough to make that statement, then I would imagine that there's probably a lot of connection between the two of them, right? Because that's a dangerous thing for a woman to do, to lay it out that succinctly. Like, I want to get engaged, right? I need you to make this happen for me.
I guess, but I don't agree. I don't agree on that one. I just think that like if two
Hmm.
people are truly in sync and they're having true and honest conversations all the time and their love is deepening, they're very clear as to when they want to get engaged, if they want to get engaged, what marriage means to them, the timeline of it all, you know? It seems weird that an
Hmm.
ultimatum has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the word ultimatum is certainly loaded for sure.
Yeah.
But at the same
Yeah.
time, and I just think about like so many of my male friends where they're like, they're just going along, and then she starts like the relationship starts deteriorating, and I know a lot of their girlfriends, right? And I go
Yeah.
and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, I don't know. But it becomes very clear relatively quickly to me that like she's ready to move on. She doesn't know where she stands anymore because they've been dating for 3 years and things seem really good. So why isn't he proposing? But she doesn't want to say that because she doesn't want to push or pressure him. And
Yeah.
from my standpoint, I would much rather, because like if the relationship's good, why mess with it? If I don't know if she seems like she's fine with it and I'm fine with it, then why touch it, right?
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I would rather her say like, I feel like this is the next level and I want to go there, and then I have to make a decision: do I want to or not? Because otherwise, what are we doing here?
I guess people are just different, right? Different personality types. Like there are different personality types. Maybe that's the basis of this. For I don't know. For me, like if I didn't, if the man that I was dating 3 years in didn't know that I wanted to get married, like we don't know each other then.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a point in there. I mean, I don't know. I'm like I'm kicking around because I see that point very clearly, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you should know your partner well enough to know what the score is, right? And if you're not having the conversations about what the future is and where you want to go, then what are you doing,
Yeah.
right?
I don't know. Yeah.
At the same time, though, like we live in a very noisy place where there's a lot of interference,
Yeah.
right?
It's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point. Like personality types, things going on, marriage not being as clear and popular as it used to be.
Well,
Get it?
let me ask you this. Like, so let's play out the scenario. So you have a guy dating for 3 years. You're like, I want to get engaged. He should just know this. Well, let's say that
Yeah.
he's your stock guy, right? I don't think you would date a stock guy, but let's just pretend he is. And he's just like, yeah, things are great. Why would I mess with it? So like he doesn't know. Like, is there a point where like you start realizing like I'm resenting and he's not picking up the hints and I'm not going to say anything because he should know? Like, is that fair to you and is that fair to him?
I'm having a hard time with this one. I would never
Totally.
find myself in a situation where 3 years in, like, my feminine truth hasn't, like, expressed itself to the point where this man knows that, like, I want to get married. Like,
Hmm.
he would never in his mind think that, like, everything's great. Why rock the boat? Because everything would never be great. It wouldn't be great 6 months in. Like, he would
Would
know.
would
Yeah.
you like and I guess I'm just like clearly this is why we do this podcast, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
And so I'm just going to continue to play with it, so long as you continue to be comfortable. Um,
Absolutely.
the thought that goes through my head though is like guys are sometimes idiots. Like even the smartest of us are sometimes idiots, and sometimes you have to carve the message backwards on a clue by four and hit him in the head with it so he can see it in the mirror. Like sometimes we don't pick that type of stuff up unless it's explicitly stated.
Let's let's pretend it's not me because I
Okay,
know very clearly that I want to get married and I think somebody would know that within dating me for a few months.
totally.
Um let's pretend that I'm not me and I'm
Okay.
24-year-old, somebody else maybe that hasn't been so deeply committed to this like feminine awakening of like always saying the truth, always speaking the truth. And then but just having this beautiful connection with a man, growing into that, having so much fun, not really thinking too much about marriage, okay? Because that's probably true around 24, 25, 26. Maybe knowing deep down it's what she wants, but like you said, having an amazing time with this man, really falling in love. And then realizing 3 years later she wants to get married and if she doesn't get engaged soon, then it's she's going to start resenting him, which is what this woman essentially was saying.
Hmm.
Um, but how would he know? Because things have been great for 3 years. She hasn't said anything, right? So I get that. In that instance, I totally and completely subscribe to the idea of, hey, I've got to talk to you about something that's really real for me right now. I've been feeling it for a while. This is true for me. I haven't really thought about it, maybe even consciously that much, but deep down, I've always wanted this. I want to get married. It's important to me. It's really important to me. Um, and I want to do it soon. And so I would imagine a conversation like that happening and hopefully the man being really receptive.
Hmm.
So in that scenario, I can totally get on board.
Yeah, Well, as you were talking, I was like, "Huh." You described the first time I was engaged, um, which was when I was very young, right? Like I was 20 years
Yeah.
old. And under that scenario, what had ended up happening was is that, you know, you really Christian relationship at
Yeah.
the time, and that scenario planned out. Like to her, it was like, okay, we're gonna do this. Why are you not asking? And like, I'm a college student, I'm poor, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
for
so I was like,
sure.
well, do you want to do this? And she's like, yes, I want to get married. And it was like, okay, well, let's consider ourselves engaged. Let's talk about this. But she had in her head like there was a ring and an event and all this other stuff.
Totally.
It never been like if she had been like you got 3 months to figure this out, I would have been like okay cool. But what she did was she came to me and said like I want this and what are we doing here and blah blah blah. And I was like well this is my plan and she's like well I want to do that now. And I was like okay well we can have that conversation. Let's consider ourselves engaged. You
Yeah.
can be my fiance. And she was like okay cool. And she told me everything was fine. It turns out it wasn't fine.
She didn't want it like that. No woman wants it like that.
Funny. I should tell you how I asked my wife to marry me. Um, I have yet to buy her a ring. Um, but and for with Dominique, it was very much of she told me early on that if I proposed with a ring, the answer would be no.
Wow.
So like I knew what the score was. I knew exactly how this was supposed to go because she told me.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
so like that was fine. And if she wanted me to like have it skywritten, I would have had it skywritten, right? Like she told me
I
what
don't
to do.
know. I think we're conflating like commitment with romance with communication. You know what I'm saying? Like we're putting it all into one and I'm having a hard time with that too.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
So what would be true for you to go into the good to go next with the conversation?
Um I guess I guess how do we want to wrap that up? Like the thing that you saw, the relationship coach and um I guess we were talking about female integrity.
Totally. And to me it
Yeah.
relates to
Yeah.
like to the idea that if women know what they want, they should communicate it. And if they don't,
Totally.
then
Totally.
I don't think you can expect a guy to figure it out.
For sure. I
Like we'll
agree.
try, but we'll probably get it wrong.
I agree. I agree. I agree. I agree. I think where this is something that is important for women to practice on their own is, my big journey has been healing some of these like hyper masculine parts of me, right? Where I said that I would do something that I really wanted to do, right? And I set it all up in this super masculine way where I have the schedule and I have the time and I'm going to do it 3 times a week and it's going to be great. And then one day I just have this like I'm overcome with grief about something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm having like a day where I just like I need to feel some things. I need to understand something. I need to let something go. But I made a commitment and now I'm ashamed. Now I'm feeling shame because I missed the commitment, right?
Hmm.
Instead of realizing I'm not a man. Like, I'm not a man. Like, I can understand what's true in this moment. And it's not the commitment I made 2 months ago. It's this grief I need to feel today so that I can clear the channel for more love, right? And that journey is really hard to do because of the heavy shame that comes with not fulfilling tasks in this like super masculine way, you know?
Totally.
Oh, that's been hard for me in my life.
Talk to me a little bit about why you think that is and how society enforces or not that idea.
Well, I think it's a couple of different things. I think there's the societal piece and then there's the individual piece on self-worth
Mm-hmm.
and what is my worth and my value as a woman and is my truth loved and appreciated, or is it pushed down and made wrong and told, you know, shut up, keep quiet, like keep it moving, like do what you're told, right? Like that's something that I dealt with as, just growing up and on an individual level, just, with some like former Soviet Union trauma around just like not being too much and not expressing myself and not being able to do all of that and just to be quiet and listen. Um, so, yeah, I think this idea of like what's the right way to do things also. Um, all the women I've ever known have never really spoken their truth to men, ever. So I learned that you're not supposed to speak your truth. And so, what's the alternative? Doing what you're told and like checking off boxes and like pleasing everybody. So, I think that's the personal piece. And then the societal piece is just huge. Like we talked about this last time. Um, your period is bad. It's something you need to just deal with every month. Like quickly, take some pills so you don't even feel the pains from it.
Mm-hmm.
Here, put an IUD in your arm so you don't even have to deal with extra period stuff. Um, put it all away, put it all away. This like monthly cycle is not something that is to be embraced. Your emotions and how you feel is not something to be embraced and expressed. It's something to be put away. And that is how I think women are treated as girls, from little girls onward. And I think that makes us want to, but we want to do good. We want to be loved. We want to be appreciated. We want love. So we try to do it in the only way that we know how, and the only way that we see people doing it, which is the masculine way, which is the tasks way, which is the achieve way, which is the do everything you say you're going to do things as you're told way. And then we're like deeply, deeply out of touch with who we are in our bodies. And so I think that's kind of where that piece comes in. Yeah.
So from where I'm sitting, and my way to come into a lot of this is through money, right?
Yeah.
So I tend to think about things in economic terms. But I feel like part of the issue here, kind of going back to the top of the episode of like, yeah, women are not have no integrity if you judge their integrity based upon a masculine model.
Yeah.
But I feel like, particularly the second wave feminism, so we're talking like 50s, 60s, 70s here, with the idea of like, in order for women to be free, they must be more like men, right?
Right.
So like
Exactly.
the idea of like we push women out of the home, being a homemaker, you're a slave, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You should be, your career is most important. So we basically pushed women to be men and men out the door.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like what you're hitting on there is saying like, well, in an economic sense, like from a worker standpoint, like being stable state all the time and committing to things is what makes money.
Yeah.
Right, that's what's demanded about from our jobs. And in
Yeah.
fact, one of the arguments against women coming to the workplace is like, well, their cycles will get in the way.
Yeah.
So now we're in a place where it's like, okay, well, that argument clearly lost out. Women are economically ascendant. Women are the most economic powerful force in the U.S. right now. The CEOs of the S&P 500 notwithstanding,
Yep.
and now there's suddenly a pushback of like, no, like I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be a woman.
Totally.
And I feel like
Totally.
this conversation is batting into that area.
Totally. I agree. I agree. You know, you know what I was thinking about recently? I'm gonna just share this with you, and
I
you
love
tell
this.
me like what you think about it. I was walking down the street yesterday, and I was like, the hell is going on with our culture and our society? These people are wearing sweatpants to this beautiful five-star restaurant that I was walking by. People are just wearing gym shorts to a karaoke thing that was happening in a park. Nobody's doing exercise right now, but they're all wearing these exercise clothes. Everybody is just doing whatever the fuck they want to do. Everything's all about comfort, and there are no boundaries. The boundaries are gone in life. And I have this like very romantic notion of like black tie, men and women dressing beautifully for dinners, and I have these very romantic idea of like the 40s and the 50s, people getting together for dinners and wearing their smoking jackets and stuff. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And I was like, oh, this all started when women went into the workplace. This all began when women went into the workplace. The real root of all of this. And I was thinking to myself, if men didn't want women to go to the workplace, men didn't want women to be happy, like they wouldn't have gone. In my vision, it's like men are the leaders, men have the structure, men hold boundaries. So the fact that like women started working is kind of a testament to men in that moment being like, well, the women are saying they want to go to work, so like we want them to be happy, we should let them. Let's just, let's let them do it. And it happened, and then it got progressively more intense and more intense. And then the weakening of men, right? That's been going on since post World War II. Like men are weaker in the sense of like there's less boundaries. There's a lot that I want to say about that. But anyway, so then I was like, now women are just not happy, right? All the women that are at these high powered jobs are the least happy. Okay. They're not happy. So my final kind of conclusion is like, women don't really know what they want,
Totally.
you
Have
know?
you
Yeah.
so walking around and thinking society has gone absolutely fucking insane is like that's every day for me. Like I can't get in a car and think, yeah, this makes sense. Like I can't do it. Like car dependence and anybody who wants to like, you know, get me really going, like we should talk about the economics of the suburbs and the anti-human nature of it. But it
Yeah.
so what you're discussing to me is just all part of the same anti-human trajectory, right? Because women coming to the workplace was also really economically beneficial for corporations because it doubled your workforce, which meant it is statistically created a depression in wages. But I digress.
Yeah.
But the question I want to ask you is: have you read "The Problem That Has No Name" by Betty Friedan?
I haven't read that book.
Oh my God, it's from the 50s.
Okay.
Um, so bear,
Betty, like
so
one of the top feminists from that time.
I know nothing about her other than she wrote
Oh,
this, and I'm like, yes, this is a great book. Um, and I think about it a lot. I read it when I was in grad school.
can you send that to me? I've been wanting to read some more like early like first wave feminist books. I think she's the same woman who quoted who's been quoted saying something like feminism will go to shit unless we focus our attention on the male problems right after shortly afterward women get like equal rights at the workplace. She basically is like pro this idea of like we need harmony.
hmm
Anyway, yeah.
So that I don't know if she wrote that. I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Okay.
But I don't know if she wrote
Yeah.
that. What
Okay.
the reason? So I think the short answer, like, and I'm all super excited because we get to talk about philosophy. Um, but there's so like the reason that there are no boundaries is that we've deconstructed them. That's been a deconstructionism has been a thing since the 80s. The idea like we deconstruct all the boundaries because they don't make any sense, and then that anyone can be anything. But what we really found is that without any structure, everybody's just formless. Um,
Totally.
that's
Totally.
why we think we're all individual with our blue jeans, t-shirt, and shoes. I digress. So the problem that has no name, I think, is actually a great book to illustrate where I think the trend you're talking about started.
Yeah. Yeah.
And basically, what she was saying was, You have these women who are in the suburbs who are
Yeah.
all massively depressed.
Okay. Yeah.
And no one wants to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
But like if you go talk to these women who are now in the suburbs, because it's the 50s, 60s, so suburbs are growing, these women are miserable. They're
Totally.
fatigued. Like this is when that like they were like prescribing them Quaaludes as a normal thing
Yes. Yes.
because they didn't know what to do with all these women. Like depression just exploded, and I think it's
Yeah.
one of these things where people are like, well, we were now diagnosing it. No, no, no. I actually think that it went the other way because when you move to the suburbs, you take the woman's community away. She
Yeah.
becomes an isolated thing in a box. So her
Yep.
husband's going to work,
Yep.
and he has a social life at work, and she's left at home. But
Yep.
go back 20 years, she wouldn't have been left at home. It would have been with all the other matriarchs in her family.
Yep.
Right, there had been a whole
Absolutely.
community that she had, and so the suburbs literally ripped her away from that. Car dependence ripped her away from that, and now she's depressed. But what she lists as the solution is women should not turn their back on having careers and professions because
Sure.
that's their social outlook. They should
Sure.
stop making the trade between having a job and being married and instead have the job to save them from this crippling depression.
Okay.
And so, women's entrance to the workforce, I think, had a lot to do with that as well. That our
Yeah.
dehumanizing
See that.
society
I could see
took
that.
women's communities away.
Ooh, I could see that. Absolutely. Meanwhile, couldn't we all just like have like women's circles instead?
Um,
Like,
sure, sure, but stop and think about it. Like that's easier
yeah.
when you all live within a 15-minute walk of each
Sure.
other.
Totally. 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 I get that. I really get that. It's like the men are off, like part of society. They're in society. They're in culture. They're in the public domain, and you're just stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That's horrifying.
Exactly.
I get that. That makes a
You
lot
know,
of
because
sense. Yeah.
my grandma used to talk about how when she was a little girl, like they would do laundry. The laundry machines weren't a thing, right? So her and all the matriarchs of her family would get together on Tuesdays and do all the sheets, and then they hang them out in the
Yeah.
backyard together. And then like while they're waiting for them to dry, they'd have like iced tea and they talk and they play
Hang
bridge
out.
and all this other stuff. Men
Yeah.
didn't have that. They
Yeah.
had their buddies at the factory.
Yeah. For sure. Absolutely. This makes so much sense. I mean, of course. Um, Meanwhile, having a women's circle and having being able to like express yourself in public domains, right? Being able to succeed in different like how did that suddenly get conflated with I need to be as good as a man and I need to like
Hmm.
work super hard to like climb this corporate ladder? How did that shift from I need to go out in public life and have community to I need to like beat men at their jobs?
Hmm. I mean, this is Dylan Bain's speculation. I actually think
Yeah.
what ended up happening is once women joined the workforce, they realized that so much of success in the corporate world is dependent on your networking. Not that they
Yeah.
called it that at the time. So
Yeah.
it's the men's club. Like my dad talks about this. In Kenosha when he was growing up, anybody who was anybody in terms of local business was a member of the Elks Club,
Mm,
which was a male only organization. And
totally.
so when he was 18 years old, he joined the Elks Club because he wanted to be with the people who actually had the power and money. And so
Totally.
he joined, even though he couldn't afford it. He would like work extra jobs so he could keep going, and he learned a lot about how to run business. But women weren't allowed. So then, what does feminism do? It comes in and deconstructs this entire idea, injects women into it because they want to have access to that power too, and
Yeah.
then it basically killed it.
It killed it because the way that women do business is not the way that men do business.
Correct. And it's not to say that women's way of doing business is wrong. It's
No
just that
way.
they're different.
It's different. Exactly. Which is why I'm super this was our first episode pro sex specific spaces.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this because
Okay.
you're a woman who has a
Yeah.
career, very
Yep.
successful one. You live
Yep.
by yourself, to best of my knowledge. Well, you have your
Yep.
cat, you know.
Yeah. Javier.
So you're self sufficient. You're supporting. So you are a direct beneficiary of this exact system we're now bemoaning. How do you square that circle?
You know, this is a great question. This is a really, really great question. The way I square that circle is starting to understand what is my purpose and passion for life. Like, what do I want to be passionate about and doing all the time? Like, what am I great at? How do I support others? How do I express myself in the public domain, like you were saying, like we were saying, versus like I need to climb the corporate ladder so that I can like make all the money and like be super successful and, you know, become a VP or even a CEO at some point. Like I don't I don't subscribe to the latter thing, you know? And I think like I grew up just like every other girl, especially immigrant girl in the like first generation in the states in the suburbs of Dallas, Texas, where it was like don't depend on anyone, do really well in school, like get into college, do really well. And I think the idea was just I was following that blindly. Um, I need to do really well so I can be self sufficient. And I think along that path, along that journey, I've been able to cultivate all of my talents and all of my passions that are very important in my life. So the idea is like, none of that will ever be lost when I get married. um, I'll be able to continue to, and that's what I think the women, like, this goes back to the women that moved to the suburbs that became depressed. The problem was they were never taught that they were allowed to have passions and purpose and a reason for being and a way to express themselves that was super fulfilling for them. They were just sitting around playing
Mhm.
solitaire and waiting for their husbands to come home. But some of the most successful women I think I've met, like even from that era, like you think about Alison Armstrong and who she talks about, and like some of the women she references, like the women that are in their 80s now, the most successful marriages of that time, she references these women being super focused on their passion while their husbands were at work. And if that passion made money, awesome. But if it didn't, that was okay too. And I just think like I'm finally at a place where I'm super proud of all that I've accomplished, but that doesn't like speak to who I am as a person. My passions do. Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know if that answered it.
Not the answer I thought we were going to go get to, but it works. Um,
Okay.
I also think that
Yeah.
there's a part of it like your purpose is defined in some ways by your social context.
Yeah,
Like
maybe.
for if you look through the 30s, 40s, 50s, like men's purpose was pretty clear,
Totally.
right? Like we knew what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Um, and even like the way my grandma talked about it, right? Like she was born into the in the late 1920s and then grew up and then through the 40s. Like there were all these women, like the women around her knew what to do, right?
Yeah.
And her purpose was to work with that community. Once that community was fractured and gone, now she doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. It's a very good
And
point.
I kind of feel like pushing it all to the individual is probably cruel to the individual because we're societal creatures.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Um, yeah. I mean, I remember when I was going off to I was going off to fashion school. Literally, when I was 18, I was going off to New York to study men's fashion design and like fine arts and all of that. And this was like a big controversial thing in my family because I had told my parents that I applied to like pre-law at all of the Texas schools like UT and A&M, and I was going to just do like the thing that we always talked about where I was going to be a lawyer. And then I just completely took a right turn and I actually only applied to art schools. And I got into the school I wanted in New York and I was going. And I had this friend of mine, her mom, super old school, traditional mom, Russian lady. She was like, well, she would never be able to compliment anybody, but this was as close to a compliment as I ever got from her, which was like, well, People will always need a seamstress. No matter what happens in
Amazing.
the apocalypse, whatever, people will always need a seamstress. And it's just so funny now, because what she's saying is like each woman can cultivate a craft that is her own if she chooses to,
Hmm.
you know? And I think that's what a lot of women did when they were in community. Who's a seamstress, who's a painter, who's, whatever.
Hmm. That's a fantastic point. I'll have to think more
Yeah.
about that. But your commentary on society though, and like how like you have these people, these nice restaurants who aren't dressed up, like, and I fall into this too, right? Like I know how to wear a suit. That's a skill.
Yeah.
Harder for me because I can never buy anything off the rack,
Yeah.
um, but I think about like, and I'm just kind of, this has just popped into my head. Um, like their live music isn't a big thing anymore, right? Like it used to be you'd go out and there'd be a band. Like my grandma, grandma and grandpa used to talk about it. Like there'd be a band and they'd be playing and you go out there and you dance and then you'd leave and like, but music was weird, right? Like it was not part of it. Now we walk around with our ears plugged with earbuds. And I was thinking about this last night because I go ruck at night. Rucking is where you have a backpack that has weights in it. And I always go after dark. And last night I was walking through and I was like, hey, like I wonder what I'm missing by always listening to podcasts. So I
Totally.
pulled my earbuds out and like I can hear all the insects in the field. I can hear the wind. I can
Yeah.
hear an owl, right? We have an owl in the
Yeah.
neighborhood. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about this of like, this is the thing. Like music has become so ubiquitous that people don't stop for it anymore. There's no human element because we can all just plug in Spotify. No one needs to dance because you don't need to learn anymore.
Mm, breaks my
You know,
heart.
like
Yeah.
like think about most clubs. It's so dark in there that you could go out there and just wiggle around and people will be like, you're not really
Yeah.
dancing. You're just kind of like being. I
Yeah.
I think about that all in terms of so much of this stuff of like how in my estimation like the 1950s was such a turning point where we went from a human society to an anti-human society.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think boundaries have a lot to do with that. And
Tell me
like,
more.
I just think that doing things because they're right, even if it's hard, like anything that we want to do, there's always pros and cons. There's always going to be things that are not so great about it, and there's always going to be things that are great about it, no matter what. But if we deduce that the great things are the list of great things is more than the list of not great things, we should maintain this thing in our society. We should just like push for that, and we should make laws that have teeth around that. And we should uphold that as citizens. And I think to myself, like, things that have happened to me in Russia. Like, I remember going to Russia about 10 years ago where we were going out to dinner and there was this Scottish guy that was with us that was wearing like kind of a disheveled outfit. And the maitre d', this is just classic because I freaking love how Russian people are sometimes, but it just makes me, I just love it. The maitre d' was like, no. You, yes. You, no. And like, what are you going to do? He couldn't come to dinner with us. He had to go home. He was not allowed in that establishment based on the way he was dressed. That was a solid boundary. And I really appreciate that. You couldn't do that in America these days. That
Totally.
restaurant would be shut down.
Yeah. Well, there's a long conversation about the civil rights movement and how that intersects with that too.
Mm,
Um,
yeah, I get that. I do get that too. That's hard. Um, yeah.
yeah, I mean, like there's even the level of exclusivity, but like when you start looking at boundaries, I mean, where you first started off, I thought was really fun. of like, if we want more of this, we should do this, and if we don't, we shouldn't.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of so many conversations, and maybe this is a topic for a different time, where people will be like, "Why are we not having, obesity kills so many people in the United States. Why are we not having this discussion?" It was like, well,
Yeah.
because somebody's bottom line is tied to an industrial food system that hurts us,
Yeah.
and we're unwilling to tell that person, no, you're not allowed to profit about off someone else's illness. And
Yeah.
then you would have to get into conversations about, well, we don't walk a whole lot. Well, why don't we walk a whole lot? Because nothing's within walking distance. Because walking is dangerous. Because we have car dependence. Because we're separated. Because and along every one of those links, somebody's livelihood is tied to maintaining an anti-human system. Car companies, fuel companies, concrete companies, you name it. So the person who
Yeah.
walks and is in community, who's self-sufficient, is actually a clear and present threat to the system that keeps
To the
us where we're
system.
at.
Yeah. Yes, I remember I was reading something about like how like Nestle came up with this idea of like six small little meals a day just to sell snacks. Like it's not that's not healthy for us to eat that many times in the day, and it's just it blows my mind. It's exactly what you're talking about, and I find it to be so frustrating. So I guess my question is like how do like where are the 300 men that are going to stand up to the tyranny? You know what I'm saying? Like how do we who stands up to this? Like who is the moral compass? Like how do we do this? Like what do we need to do to stand up to this? Can we stand up to this?
Well, I think it's very difficult. I don't think it was intentionally designed this way, but I think the byproduct is very difficult. It's my old joke of, I want to join the revolution, but I couldn't find parking.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you think about
Yeah.
Paris, like they're
Yeah.
in these dense areas where they can walk everywhere. So when shit goes sideways, they can just flood the streets.
Yeah.
We'd have to go, like, if I wanted to go protest at the Capitol, that's a 45-minute commitment for me to get down to the Capitol, even though I live in the Denver metro area. I got to get down to the Capitol. I got to find parking. I got to walk over there. I got to pick it, and then I have to like sit in traffic on the way back out. Like, there's no ease of motion. And I think the other part about it is, like, if you start talking about, like, we should build a pro-human society, the same guys who would be most likely to join me would also be most likely to leave the second they realize their pickup truck is one of the things that is actually creating the illness we're protesting.
Right.
Like this goes back to the idea that, like, there's a lack of moral courage to stand up to this type of thing, because we're unwilling. We want all the benefits, but we're unwilling to change anything else. So the only way we're willing to allow this to happen is if everything gets to stay the same. And I think that that's a
Hmm.
byproduct of, we cookie cuttered and standardized every American city. The food's the same
Totally.
in every place. The
Totally.
transportation system's the same in every place. But I've lived overseas.
For
I've
sure.
lived in a place where
Same.
I can walk everywhere, and
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know,
It is amazing. There's a lot of community there.
totally.
But, you argue like it's polluted, it's dirty, like is it better to live in a rural place with a smaller community, you know? I don't know.
I mean, so American cities are disgusting,
True.
and Taipei is, like, there's plenty of pollution for sure. Um,
Sure.
but then, like, Berlin isn't,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the entirety of the Netherlands is a great example of this. Like,
Yeah.
they bike and they walk everywhere. Paris is a good example of this. Like, they're not dirty cities, they're not polluted cities. They're just cities that are still built at a human scale.
They're functioning. They're not falling apart. Something
Totally.
cities like Mexico City. Oh my God, that place. I hate that place. It's falling apart. It's huge, just over the top polluted. But yeah, I think.
Well, there's a
Anywho,
right. I'm sorry, I
go ahead.
interrupted you.
No, no, go ahead.
There's
I'm
there's
good.
a right way and a wrong way to build a city.
Yeah,
And I think the biggest problem with Mexico City is, like, when did it experience all its growth? When we started building cities for cars.
yeah,
When did Paris and Berlin and all those other places
yeah.
experience their growth? When we were building cities for humans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and we
Mm,
really, like, walkable cities with 4-story apartments. Like, That's what Babylon looked like, right? That's what like the ancient Jerusalem looked like.
And those are the places people are wearing dress pants to dinner, except for the
Totally,
Americans.
totally. I mean, my biggest problem with like I try to dress like whatever the place I'm at is.
Yeah.
So I do dress up when I'm overseas. My problem
Yeah.
is that my size makes me stand out. Like there are very few people
Yeah.
overseas that have shoulders as wide as mine.
Yeah. Totally. But I just think the point is like people will argue like, well, it's more comfortable to wear whatever, it's easier. It's like, why are we basing our entire livelihood on what's comfortable and what's easy? Like, what the hell is wrong with us? This we used to be like, I know I'm being a little like whatever, but
I'm
we
here
used to
for
be
it.
the home of the brave.
Totally. I mean, so here's the thing that maybe is a topic for our next episode of like
Sure.
how much did women changing their standards have to do with that?
Hell yeah.
Because if I
That's
if I
big.
if I know I had better look good on with my clothes, I'm going to dress way different.
100%. I think this all started with like it's a bit of a slippery slope, right? I mean, I started thinking about this. Okay, men were wearing suits to work. Women were wearing dresses and skirts at home. Women started going to work. They were wearing dresses and skirts at work. Then they were like, well, it's more comfortable to wear pants. If I'm getting in and out of the subway, I should wear pants. So now I'm going to wear pants, okay? Cool. It's already started, right? And then it's like, well, if I can just wear pants, why can't I wear stretchy pants? Well, if I can wear stretchy pants, why can't I just wear t-shirts, right? And then it just started. And then if we're not holding ourselves to high standards as women, then we can't hold men to high standards either.
Totally. I mean, so much of it has changed. When I graduated from undergrad, I went out and bought three suits, right? And I
Yeah.
had three suits. They were very good suits. I had shirts, ties. I, in fact,
Yep.
still have all my ties. I've got over 50 ties.
Yeah.
Um, and when I was a teacher, I wore a tie, a suit pants, and a tie every day. It was, and if you look at my results, I can't tell you that that didn't have something to do with it. But now, the last time I interviewed for a job and I showed up in a suit, the interviewer said, it's kind of weird because I haven't seen a guy in a black suit in almost a decade.
Jesus,
And
that
I was
blows me up.
like, I was dressed, it was black suit, white shirt, tie, everything's pressed. I had
Yeah.
cufflinks, polished shoes. I mean, I looked like $1 million. And I asked him for feedback, and he was like, you shouldn't come dressed for an entry level job like you're the CEO. That was the feedback I got from this guy. And I didn't get
So
the job.
sad. So sad where we're at with this within society that that's the feedback.
Yeah, well, irony of ironies, I got a different job at the same company, and
Mm-hmm.
I know the person that they hired instead of me, and that was exactly the difference. I was a better
Mm-hmm.
candidate all the way around, but I intimidated him with my suit.
Totally.
And I think we should leave it there.
Love it. Perfect place to end.
Fantastic. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you
See you
next
next
week.
week.